What is going on, everybody? If you guys are an investor in our market, this video is for you. We're going to be talking about the Zillow's latest renter survey that just came out. And then we're also going to talk about how that impacts our market directly here in Eugene and Springfield. So as you'd expect, the demand for rentals still massively outweighs the supply. And we're not really seeing that in the Eugene area. So as you can see here, there's 379 rentals available. And this is just the ones that Zillow is tracking. So if there's any outside resources like Craigslist or anything like that, more than likely it's not being tracked here. And as you can see here, the median rental price back in January of last year was about $1,556, and it saw an increase over the year before tapering out at $1,875 a month. And then the beginning of this year, it was at the highest that it's been for this year at $1,995 a month, and then has seen a steady decrease to where it is now at $1,685 a month, whereas last year was about $1,907 a year. So looking at this trend, it looks like rental prices will continue to go down given the fact that we have so many rentals available. And as you can see here, the most common one is also $1,500 a month, with $1,300 being the second most common. So it definitely makes sense that the median rental price or median rental a month will go down based on this information right here. And then in Springfield, we've got about 103 rentals available. Again, that doesn't include any outside sources. So as you can see here, it stayed pretty consistent throughout the year versus last year, where it had quite a bit of a dip in April and then increased in July, a steady increase from April to July, where it's at now at $1,695 a month versus last year which was $1,575 a month. So more of what renters would expect for rents to go up year over year. And as you can see here, with the less rentals available, $1,500 a month is still the most common, with $1,400 a month being the second most common. So it'll be interesting to see how this continues to develop and grow from there. So as you'd expect, with less rentals available, that the market is warmer because of that. And it also talks about here that, in a nutshell, that during 2023, the typical US renter is someone who is older than the norm and has slightly different preferences and expectations from the previous generation of renters. And it talks about here that the renters demographic, that in the past, renters have tended to be younger than homeowners because of the long time it can take to save up for a down payment on a home. This doesn't really make sense to me. I mean, I feel like this is like contradictory a little bit. I do understand that for a lot of people, it takes time to save up for a down payment on a home. I think for most people, and this just doesn't make sense to me, where it says renters have tended to be younger than homeowners because of the time it can take. I think that would be reverse, where it would say renters have tended to be younger than homeowners because home prices were cheaper back then versus the time it took to save up for a down payment. Because then it talks about here where, however, while just over half, 51% of all US renters are under the age of 40, the average age of a renter in today's market is 39 years old. So this is current statistics and this is old statistics. So I think if they just changed it to renters have tended to be younger than homeowners because home prices were cheaper versus the amount of time it takes to save up for a down payment versus than it does for today's market, That would definitely make more sense to me versus what they have here. And then that pretty much goes in line with this, where, as you can see, that 26% of all renters are about 18 to 29 years old, and then 24% is 30 to 39, and then it significantly starts to drop as people get older. And so this is the part where now it's talking about in today's market versus the past, that the average renter is now 39 years old, or 39 years old, whereas the average first-time homeowner is around 35 years old, according to the National Association of Realtors. And then it also talks about here where the average age for first-time home buyers was 29 in the 1980s. So not a huge difference considering how much home prices have gone up and how affordability has definitely decreased from the 80s. So a 6-year difference is not all that bad. I would be curious to know what the statistics were for, the average age of renters that they were talking about here, because then that would give me the full picture of exactly what they're talking about. And then it also says here that the average age of renters who haven't moved in the past are renting longer, or who are renting long-term, is even older at 41 years old. And then, of course, this older age is consistent with a falling affordability of home ownership and reduced inventory of homes to buy, which we're definitely seeing in our market. The percentage of renters among household decision makers, so they're talking about people who own a home versus people who rent, predictably shoots up in more expensive regions of the country. So, for example, 39% of household decision makers are renters in the Northeast. So think of New York, for example. And then it also talks about how only 24% are in the Midwest, a region with lower home prices. So think of like Nevada, for example, or Arizona. And then it talks about here where regional income variations also make a huge impact on the distribution of renters across the country. Twice as many people rent in the South, 36% of all renters, as opposed to the Midwest, 18%. And the reason for this is almost certainly tied to income disparities. And then we've got the percent of all renters by region. So the most being in the South at 36%. And then on the West, like here in Oregon, 28%, Northeast, 19%, and 18% in the Midwest. I don't fully understand this. Regional income variations. I think basically what it's saying is that people make less in the South versus in the Midwest. And so here it talks about the average salary in Minnesota is almost 56,000, but it's just above 40,000 in Mississippi. So yeah, it does talk about, how much people are making per year. According to the Zillow survey, almost half of recent renter households, 48%, make under $50,000 per annum. So there is undoubtedly a strong link between renting and income, which definitely makes sense. And as you can see here, here's the statistics on it. Less than $50,000 a year, 48% are renters, or percent of renters households by household income is 48,000 for anyone making less than 50,000. 50 and less than 100,000 is 30%, and then 100,000 or more is 22%. The survey points to a possible explanation for the lower overall income levels of renters. About a third of renters, 30%, are single-person households and have never been married. However, the survey also shows that more than 50% of renters are married, and it is more likely that the lower income of renters in general is due to a combination of factors, including regional economic disparities. So this talks about, what are renters paying now? And it says the median rent for a one-bedroom apartment in the U.S. is currently around $1,253 per month, while the median rent for any type of rental housing, so think of like a stick-built house, is $2,000 per month. Again, there are huge regional variations. So like in Philadelphia, it's $1,600 a month, and in Jackson, Mississippi, it's $1,100 a month. And then it talks about how the coastal areas continue to be some of the most expensive in the country for renters, while the South generally remains more affordable, and that the pandemic era migration to the Sunbelt cities notwithstanding. And then this talks about here how the renters feel about the homes they live in right now. Overall, 67% they felt their home needed updates, with 18% saying that the updates the rental needed were major. This partly has to do with the type of housing available to renters. Most rentals in the US are apartments in small buildings, single-family detached homes, or condos. These tend to be older properties that need more repairs. Compared to large multifamilies, the buildings renter find to be in the best condition. So large multifamily buildings are the buildings renters find to be in the best condition, which definitely makes sense. Almost half, 45% of renters who have an apartment in a large multifamily building, so think of 50 plus units, say their home was like new, while only 20% of renters rated their single family home this way. However, this doesn't mean that most US renters prefer living in a larger multi-unit buildings. In fact, most gravitate towards apartments in small buildings. Of the renters who preferred rental property is in an apartment building, 42% would prefer a building with fewer than 10 units, while 36% would like a medium-sized building of between 10 and 49 units. So this is where, for the investors who are looking at buying bigger scale, people are definitely open to it, but this gives you an idea as to, what kind of home they're looking for. So 29% said that they're looking for a single family detached house, and, they're going to pay more for it. Whereas, 17% are okay with a 50 units or more, 17%, 18%. So if you're looking at buying a larger size building, that would definitely be your best bet, because renters are open to it, and you're definitely going to get a lot more money, because of how many units are available versus, buying a single family home and, being only able to get so much. So, and it also makes a note here, while an apartment is the single most popular type of dwelling people like renting, 54% of all renters name apartments as a type of accommodation they hope to rent. Most do not want to live in a huge building, and they're prepared to look for what they want rather than settling. So for the people who want, so 29% of people who want a single family detached house, they're just not going to look for anything outside of that. And according to the survey, most renters end up in the type of home they initially planned to rent. So, even though it's a smaller pie, there's definitely more money to be made here. And so, I would definitely be looking at the 50 units or more versus, having a bigger pie of a smaller option available. And, since it's pretty much the same with the 10 to 49 units and then fewer than 10 units, I mean, it just makes more sense to go with the 50 units or more if you can sustain that and have the capital for it. And then it says every landlord wants to know how long they'll have their tenants for. The survey provides some valuable insights into renters' moving tendencies. The truth is that the vast majority of renters do plan to move sooner rather than later, with home buying plans most often being the reason. Of those who took part in the survey, 72% said they plan to move within the next 3 years. So with 72% saying they plan to move within the next 3 years, that can give you a pretty good idea as a landlord when the majority of people are going to be moving. The share of renters who are considering moving imminently or within the next year is huge, 54%. The share of renters who have no plans to move is declining and is currently 15%, down from 20% back in 2018. Interestingly, renters plan to buy have increased despite high property prices and mortgage interest rates. So this is pretty interesting. So for those of you who are waiting for house prices to drop or mortgage or interest rates to go down, which is more likely than house prices dropping, take a look at this. Only 30% of renters said they were planning to buy a home in 2018, and the percentage is now 43%. So now you've got 9% more people looking at buying a home than back in 2018. And that's even with the higher property prices and the interest rates the way they are. So with talks of interest rates going down and home prices continuing to go up, more than likely that's going to continue to be higher. So, if that goes from 43% to 50%, now people, you've got way more competition. So, unfortunately, you could find any reason in the world as to why you can't buy a home, or why the market's going to be better in the future, or you should have bought 4 years ago. And while all that might be true, people are still finding ways to do it, and even more people are wanting to do that, even with the way that affordability is, higher property prices, and interest rates the way they are. So I would definitely not be one of those people who are sitting on the sidelines, waiting for things to drop, because that just means that more people are going to want to jump on buying a house. And I'd rather not be one of those people who miss out on an opportunity because I was sitting on the sidelines. And then this goes into the percentage wise. So from 2018 to 2023, it's gone up from 34% to 43% pretty consistently. And then people who plan to continue renting, from 2018, it was 62% to 52%. And I think a lot of people are definitely understanding, with rents being much higher, pretty much comparable to, especially in our market, I don't know about other markets, but in our market where rents are pretty much comparable to, a mortgage, that it just makes more sense for them to purchase a house. And then people who didn't plan to have another living situation has pretty much stayed congruent over the years. And, a big part of that is that a large share of renters belongs to the millennial generation. So people aged between 29 and 43. So as we go back here, it talks about how the average first-time home buyer is around 35 years old, that definitely makes sense why more people want to purchase a house, because they're getting into that age where they're thinking about, long-term plans, possibly creating a family, having kids, having a place for their dogs or their animals to roam around in. So, it's no surprise that the majority of that a large share of renters belongs to the millennial generation. So people aged between 29 and 43, that has also caused a big increase on how many people want to purchase a house. So these folks are determined to achieve the settled lifestyle associated with home ownership despite the increasing affordability of this option. So this article talks a lot about a lot of different things. If you want to check out the whole thing, this is just kind of a breakdown of bigger pockets, condensing it. The Zillow's report is way longer than this. And it's just very valuable information for someone like myself and investors who, are curious to know what renters want, when they're planning on moving, when they're planning on buying, all this stuff, because then you can start to plan accordingly with your portfolio and your investments to move forward. So the harsh reality, of course, is that many of them will rent for longer than they anticipated, regardless of their current plans. And in my opinion, I would say it's smart that they are making these plans. So even if it doesn't work out as planned, don't give up. Keep your plans and work very hard to keep them. People now rent for an average of 6 years before buying, up from 2.6 years in the 1970s. And again, home prices were a lot different back then. Their desires are the same as 50 years ago, but the economic landscape has shifted dramatically. Most renters who continue renting cite affordability as the key factor in their decision. And then you can look at some digital tools and demand for them. And then this is very interesting here. What renters believe to be highly important in a home. So as you can see here, from 2018 to 2023, the being close to family owner and or friends has gone up from 36% to 39%. Close to shopping, services, and or leisure activities have gone up from 47% to 56%. Public transportation didn't change a whole lot, 36% to 37%. Same thing with the commute to work or school, 58% or to 59%. I think working remotely has definitely played a factor in that. And from my understanding, there's a lot of companies that are requiring you to come back in the office because it just creates a better team environment, which definitely makes sense to me. Now, this is the most interesting thing. These are probably the most important things for people, which definitely makes sense as we, shed off the COVID era, where in a walkable neighborhood from 55% to 61%, and then offered a sense of community or belonging from 33%. And then as you can see during COVID, went up to 39% to then 42% this year. So people definitely want to connect more, socialize more, and, have a sense of belonging with the people around them. And it talks about that here. These shifts in renter priorities are in line with the overall post-pandemic migration patterns away from the largest cities and towards smaller but still vibrant metro areas. Renters, even if they don't plan to rent for very long, want more than just a place to crash after work. They desire a fun and friendly area to call home. So like we talked about in the Eugene area, there's 379 rentals available. So that talks about that here too. The biggest takeaway for real estate investors from the Zillow report is that as squeezed financially as they are, renters know they have choices. They prefer well-maintained homes in good neighborhoods with a vibrant, community-oriented feel. Affordability continues to be a key concern, and investors who can tick all three major preference boxes, affordable for the area, in good repair, and in a good neighborhood, will reap the rewards of lower tenant turnover, higher rent yields, and lower vacancy rates. So if you guys are looking at any type of rentals to add to your portfolio, or even just thinking about getting that started, there are some areas that I know of that's in high demand. North Gillum is one of those areas, Cal Young area, Hayden Bridge area, Ferry Street Bridge area. There's a lot of great areas in our neighborhoods in our town. So definitely reach out to me, give me a call, text me, DM me on Facebook, Instagram, wherever you guys have me connected. And I'm always here to help you. So look forward to chatting with you, and I'll talk to you soon.